Today I want to spend a little time talking about the pop culture series. So I thought I'd start at the beginning with the very first license piece that we did, and that's this guy, James Brown. And let me pull him down. And James Brown was, said he was the first license piece that we did. And this is a kind of a special James Brown because he's autographed. So if you look on the back, it says, "I feel good." And it's got James Brown's signature on them. I had him, after we had launched it, I had him autograph a case of them for me, and I obviously kept one of them. Why wouldn't I? But so for years I was, for most of the time I was at Gemmy, I was responsible for the licensing. So I would call a lot of vendors licenses, for things that we wanted to do. A lot of them would call me too. And one day, James Brown's manager called me and said he wanted to do a James Brown doll. At the time, I didn't really have a module that made sense, so I didn't. So I turned him down. Well, then I had a couple Chinese engineers working for me for a few years in our Dallas office at Gemmy, and I'd meet with them a couple times a week. We talk about different modules that we could do, different movements, and then they would work on them. Sometimes it was my direction, sometimes they came up with things on their own that were good. Well, one day I was sitting at one of their desks, and he had the hip swinging module, and the hip swinging module was just basically just this part of the module. We did a lot of items with the hip swing early on when I was at Gemmy. Like the hip swinging Santa was the biggest. We had in toys, we had Crocodile Rock and Disco Dino that did it. We had the skeleton doing singing, putting on the wrists, but they were like 12 inches tall with a small head. So one day I was sitting at his desk, and he had this big 6-inch skull on his head. I said, "Well, can you put that head on the hip swinging module? Let's see how it looks." So they did it, and then it was this really cool exaggerated movement with the head going side to side, while it was still hip swinging and the arms going up and down. And then I said, "Well, can you make the mouth move?" So then they added the mouth movement. And it was a very cool movement. So I started with some Halloween characters. I did like a skeleton, think Super Freak. I used that song in a lot of different items over all the dandy occasions and Gemmy. So that was a very popular song. We were the first people to use that in Halloween, the Super Freak song. And we had a monster, Frankenstein. We had a witch. We had a werewolf singing. Clap for the Wolfman. That was pretty good. So we had like 4 characters, and they did extremely well. It was like for 2 years they were like probably some of our best sellers during that time. Well, then I thought about it, and I go, well, this module would make a great James Brown piece. It just, and the big advantage, because we done when I first got to Gemmy, we did like a Elvis, like a slow. The module wasn't very good. It was like moving slow. But he had a realistic sized head. It was a very small head, and we couldn't get the sculpt approved. I had the same problem like that Lucy up there. Same problem, which was one of the last pop culture items that we did. It's just they didn't want to do the oversized head, and so it's just they're so picky and so hard. We had outside sculptors. We couldn't get the sculpts right. Well, with James Brown, it's a caricature. It doesn't have to be exact because we're doing a caricature of the piece. So. We launched James Brown, and it worked. It was very hard. I mean, the first couple of people I tried to sell it to, I went on a lot of sales calls at the time, not all of them, and nobody was going to pick it up. So I had a meeting with KB, and this was after the Dancing Hamsters were out, after Big Mouth Billy Bass. So, KB, I had all their top management in the meeting. Had the president, the senior VP, the digital merchandise manager, the buyer, the assistant buyer, another buyer. So it was just me and our VP of sales that were at this meeting, and I really pushed this piece and said, "Well, they said it's not a toy. It doesn't make sense." They go, "Yeah, it's not a toy, but it's funny, and all the kids that come into your store have a parent with them, and the parent's gonna like this piece, and you got to give it a try." So they tried it, and it just blew out, and then we sold it. Walgreens, everybody pretty much carried this, I believe. So it kind of became a phenomenon. An interesting story, but after we sold quite a few units, I got on the phone with James Brown and his manager. I had a conference call with them, and James Brown wanted us to TV advertise it, and I told him that's not what we do. We don't TV advertise. It's not part of our business model. But he wouldn't take no for an answer, and he started saying, "I didn't fall off a turnip truck. I didn't fall off a turnip truck." And one thing he's hard to understand. I couldn't understand him, and then also. I didn't heard that expression, so they finally told me it was Russian. And I said, still, we can't do it. And so we ended up selling a lot more. We actually downsized it and did a smaller version of it as well. So that's kind of the pop culture series. These are the 18-inch pieces. We did do smaller versions, still with oversized heads. Later on, we did a smaller version of James Brown, and you see we've got, you've got the Barney Fife and the Bill Murray. We did a John Belushi. I did some items for the Mavericks, which I'll talk about some other time. So that's kind of the story of James Brown. It kind of launched the pop culture series after James Brown was launched. Then we started going into Bing Crosby and Dean Martin, the Three Stooges. Not all of them had oversized heads, but a lot of them did. Abbott and Costello and Louis Armstrong, and on and on. We had quite a few different pieces. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed it.